Now, before we start talking about the advanced features that are in OS2 version 3 and the new features in OS2 version 3, we have to make sure we hit some of the basics. When you're talking to your customers, don't assume they know this. We've been with OS2 for a while and we make some assumptions, assuming the customer knows, well, print spooling, well, that's part of OS2. And disk cache, that's part of OS2. Memory management, that's part of OS2. Even if it's for your DOS programs or if it's for your Windows programs. We make the assumption that, well, yeah, the customers know this because OS2 is an operating system, not just a bunch of add-ons, that of course all of that's in there. Don't make that assumption. Also, don't assume that they understand that OS2 is an operating system. I gave a beautiful presentation, I thought, and afterwards a person came up and said, so it installs on top of DOS? No, it is an operating system. It will run your DOS programs, and DOS is in OS2. They don't purchase it separately. So no matter what version 3 box they pick up, DOS is in there. If you look through your hard disk, you'll find an MDOS subdirectory, and sure enough, that's DOS. It's been modified to run terrifically underneath OS2, but it is real DOS. It's not emulated. Most importantly, Windows support. OS2 version 3 will run your Windows programs a couple of different ways. If the customer has DOS and Windows, OS2 version 3 can use their Windows. If they do not have DOS and Windows, you can buy OS2 version 3 with IBM's WinOS2. And what that is it is Windows code, but it's been modified slightly to run better underneath OS2. It's not emulation, though. It's real Windows software, and that's why it runs Windows programs so well. So when you get the version 3 box, look down under the system requirements, and it'll tell you then whether you need to have Windows already to run Windows programs or whether that WinOS2 code is included so the customer can run Windows programs without going and buying Windows separately. But those preload machines, and there's a lot of them out there that were preloaded from the manufacturer, those machines are a perfect target for OS2 because it'll take those Windows users and it'll improve their productivity. And there's a real good tagline that goes with the marketing of OS2, and it is that it will make your people do more things more easily. And it's easier to do more things. Yes, OS2 is very easy, and I'll show you that, but it's extra easy when it comes to doing multiple things compared to DOS and Windows. So don't forget the basics. It's a real operating system, runs DOS, runs Windows, no emulation, real software, disk cache, memory management, print spoolers, all included. We'll talk about the bonus pack that adds on, but just the base operating system saves your customers money because all of these things are put in there. And if you price them separately, you wouldn't be able to create what OS2 gives you. You'd come up with a mock-up, if you will, of things that you want to make into OS2. You'd never achieve it, and you'd spend a lot more money. It is a value for your customer, pure and simple. So now, what I want to do is I want to walk you through the installation of OS2, show you what the customer is going to see when they install OS2 and what you'll see when you install OS2 version 3, and then go through some of the requirements. What does it take for my hardware to run, and what hardware do I have that OS2 can exploit? So let's take a look at the installation program. So now, let me take you into the Selective Install, which is a good place to show your customers what the OS2 install program takes. Now, from the System Setup folder, I'm actually going to select Selective Install. This is one of the very first things that your customer is going to see. Well, now what's the very first thing? Well, you can get OS2 either on diskette or CD-ROM. I highly recommend the CD-ROM. It saves a lot of money, it saves a lot of time, it's very convenient, and I personally like it because it's ecologically sound rather than sending out all of those diskettes. Either one, diskette or CD-ROM, after you've inserted the first couple diskettes, you'll come up with a screen. It says, do you want the advanced install or do you want the easy install? If the customer selects the easy install, there are no more questions asked. OS2 is installed. If they select advanced install, this is the next screen they see. This asks them if they want to change their hardware that OS2 sees is supported. If you are familiar with OS2 in the past, version 2 or version 1 before then, One of the problems OS2 had was device driver support. Well, OS2 version 2 didn't come with a lot of device drivers, but after a while it picked up, it became very popular, and lots of device drivers appeared. They just weren't on the OS2 diskettes. You had to go out to a bulletin board and get them. All of that stuff now has been compiled and put together on the CD-ROM and on the diskette. So now you'll see the device driver support in OS2 version 3 is extensive. When you get to this screen, OS2 has determined what it thinks you have installed on your system. If you want to change it at this point, you can. Obviously, it's not going to pick up what printer you have, especially if it's powered off on the end of your parallel port or if you're on a laptop and you're not even connected. So you've got to go in and tell it some of these things. First off, identifies your mouse, and of course we support serial mouse and bus mouse, etc. Advanced power management. I installed this on my laptop, my ThinkPad here. It automatically identified advanced power management and it installed advanced power management. And this is the latest version of the software. So if you have a portable, no matter who it's from, and it supports advanced power management, OS2 can identify it and use the advanced features of it. Other things, Cd-Rom support. Now if I go on and select Cd-Rom support, you'll see that we support Cd-Rom devices all the way from CD Technology, Chin and Hitachi, Mitsumi. The Mitsumi drive got very, very popular last year. Native drivers in OS2, NEC, Panasonic, Philips, Pioneer, Sony, Texel, Toshiba. Now these are not just Scuzzy CD-ROM devices. These are IDE CD-ROM devices as well. These are CD-ROM devices that hook on the end of your Sound Blaster. It's a real popular card. It's a good price performer for customers. If you look up here at different device support, you'll see it's quite a list. Other things that the customer might want to see, if you select multimedia device support, understand in OS2 we can play back and record audio. Now with version 3 we can play back and record video. The award-winning Video In product is now in OS2's bonus pack. We've always been able to play back video, and we do it very, very well. OS2 can play back video far, far better than Windows. That's a moot point. It's been proven. Now we can record video, and much, much better than DOS Windows as well, because we're a real operating system. Well, Video In, the very first time it was introduced, won the Best Product Award at Comdex for multimedia products. It's now part of OS2. Video In supports several different video devices, and if you go through the list here, there's Wave Catcher, obviously an audio capture device, but look down here at things like, let's see, here's the Real Magic Video Card, Samsung Video Magic, all of the different Sound Blaster cards for record and playback of audio. The list is very extensive, and this list is always being updated. So make sure if you've got a customer that's got a specific need, go out and check a bulletin board. And I'll talk to you about where you can get good information on OS2 drivers and the like. But check a local bulletin board. Chances are the drivers will become available. Because I'll tell you, OS2 version 3 is going to sell. And it's going to sell by the millions. And as it sells by the millions, those hardware manufacturers are going to want to support it. So take a look, and I'll bet you're going to find that the drivers become available if they're not available already. Other things that I want to point out. Pcmcia Support. I'm going to show you that in just a moment. But Pcmcia is the hottest thing in laptop technology. These things are fun, except if you have to configure them. I'll show you how OS2 plug and play for Pcmcia configures them very easily. All I did was had these plugged in my machine when I installed OS2 version 3. It identified that I had IBM ThinkPad 750 and installed the support. But it's not just for IBM laptops. IBM, Matsushita, NCR, NEC, Panasonic, Toshiba. We are a software company and we support them all. Our customers need that. So you'll see the list of Pcmcia devices there. Another thing is printer support. I won't even bring up the list. It's too big. The list of supported printers is massive, and in version 3, I think you can get support for just about any printer you can imagine. The last thing on the list is Scuzzy adapter support. Scuzzy adapters are good, we all know that, but there's a lot of different flavors. Well, OS2 supports most all of them, from Adaptec to BusLogic, DPT, Future Domain, IBM, AT Bus, Microchannel Bus, they're all there. Now, what does it take to run OS2 though? I mean, we'll support those things, but what does it take to run? You need a hard disk with at least 18 megabyte free. That's a pretty good number. Maybe as much as 30. It depends on what you want to install. Here's all of the different things that come along with OS2. This list is pretty extensive. Remember that you can have OS2 with DOS in it, and you can get OS2 with the WinOS2 for Windows programs in it. That becomes a lot of space. Multimedia is no longer an add-on. It's part of the operating system install. You can, in the advanced install, bring up this list to select a minimal install. Say, hey, I can't afford to put the documentation on them on a laptop and I don't want it. I can go in and select fonts and system utilities and tools and games that I don't want, and I can deselect them all. While I have this list up, this is real important. You know, David, I have a customer and they installed OS2 version 3 and they're running their DOS programs and they're running their OS2 programs. They bought a Windows program. They want to install Windows now. Can they install Windows after they've installed OS2 version 3 and get it to run? Absolutely. Go to a command prompt and install DOS and Windows, or go to install Windows from that command prompt. Select WinOS2 support from here. Click on More, and all you got to do is put in the path. In my case, it's C:\Windows. Just tell OS2 where your Windows programs are, where the Windows code is, and from now on, it'll run your Windows for you. So that's one way that you can install after the fact. I will talk to you about support for DOS programs in OS2 and about a thing called the dual boot facility. I very highly recommend the dual boot facility. You have those customers out there that like DOS games, Doom, Wolfenstein. They're pretty challenging games. There's games that say, when you run me, get your TSRs out of the system. Get everything out of the system. If there's anything there, I won't run, or I'll blow it out of the system and try to get it out of the way. OS2, when it does this install, if it identifies that you have DOS and Windows on your machine, it automatically keeps them. You don't lose DOS, and let your customers know this. This is an easy migration to a 32-bit operating system. You don't lose DOS and you don't lose Windows. At any time, if you want to go back to where you started, pure DOS and Windows, you can do that. OS2 will automatically install a dual boot facility, and it'll put an icon on your system. In fact, if I go over right now to my system folder, I open up the command prompts within my system folder, and this is where I could go to a C:\. In there, you'll see dual boot. If I click on that, it says, are you sure you want to boot DOS? And I say yes, and it goes back and it gets my old config sys file, and it gets my old autoexec.bat file, and it goes through a boot of the system. I'm back where I started. Pure DOS, pure Windows. So if you got the game that won't run, now it will. After you get done with it, you go back and say boot/OS2, and it goes back and it boots you to 100% OS2 where we're at right now. It is the safest migration to a 32-bit operating system that any customer can have. Let them know that there's security in this. It's not going to hose your system. I'm not even Canadian. It's not going to hose your system. You'll be just fine. And there's an easy way to get back to where you started from. If you use dual boot, your Windows code is all intact as well. I personally never use it. Everything runs for me. But I don't play some of those really hard DOS games. That's usually the place. If you got a customer that's a gamer, make sure they install the dual boot facility or use the dual boot facility. Actually, you know, it's a good time to show you OS2's tutorial. And the reason is, behind that, in case you ever get the opportunity to sell OS2 or to show OS2 to a friend, I like to approach it logically. What's it take? Installation program. What do I do next? The tutorial, because that's the next thing a user sees when they install OS2. Then I go off and show them the user interface, and so that's the way I'm going to approach it now. The next thing a user sees after they've installed OS2, which was the last screens we were looking at, they're going to see the tutorial. Now, even if you are an OS2 user, you might want to take a look at this tutorial. It's brand new in version 3, and it's pretty hot. It looks good, and it brings you over from Windows if you're a Windows user, and if you're already an OS2 user, it includes expert tips and techniques. Here's the very first page that you're going to see. I go ahead and follow the instructions, and it walks me over. What, David, what if I am absolutely brand new to the mouse? What if I've got that user that doesn't know anything about OS2? Well, you can go into Introduction, you can go into Basics, Objects. Let's pick the index here. At the very top of the index, let's talk about using the mouse. Well, the index will walk you through the basics all the way from what is a mouse button, how does the mouse move? And we've all heard the story where the user picks up and points it at the screen and clicks at it, or I think my favorite is they put the mouse on the floor and try to use it as a foot pedal. Okay? Well, there are people out there that are absolute neophytes to operating systems and to PCs. This is a good tutorial for them. It can walk them through step by step. What's an object on the screen? What is an icon? And we can't take it for granted that they know this. If I step back out of the tutorial into other areas like OS2 Basics, well, here's some of the things that are up on the screen. Click down here on the bottom where it says Windows, and it introduces a Windows user to OS2. It says the OS2 desktop is similar to the Windows Program Manager. Well, we all know it's similar, but far superior. And I don't mean that jokingly. You take a good look at this OS2 Workplace shell. It is very, very superior to the Program Manager and the File Manager. This tutorial will help people come into it. So you click on Windows. Wait a minute, David. I'm an expert user. Click on Expert, and it'll give you tips and techniques on OS2 hotkeys and quick ways to get to things. If I wanted to go a little bit into, let's say, customizing the OS2 system, here's some information about how you can drag and drop colors. Well, you know what? I'd really like to give this a try. So you go ahead and click on Do It, and it will bring up whatever program it happened to be calling there. In this case, it's the System Color Palette, where I can do drag and drop of fonts and colors, put them out on the desktop. When I'm done with that, I go ahead and close down the color palette, click on Return, I'm back over into the tutorial. Throughout the tutorial, Practice and Do It are a couple of different choices so that the user can go out on the real system and use those functions. We spent a long time studying people and the way that they interact with operating systems to create this tutorial. It took a lot of work, and I'm as expert an OS2 user as anybody as far as a user, and I walked through that tutorial and I learned some things. So it's highly recommended. It reduces training costs for you. It reduces support costs for you, because if they go through the tutorial, chances are they're not going to call you for some of those simple things, maybe even some of those expert things. Highly recommended. It's the first thing the user sees when they see OS2 after the installation. The next thing I'd like to do, though, is introduce you to the Workplace shell, give you an idea on what you're going to be doing to interact with OS2 from here on. Now, the next logical thing after the tutorial is to take a look at the Workplace shell. The Workplace shell is the user interface in front of OS2. If you have new customers, if you have new users, the Workplace shell is going to be the user interface of choice for them. If you have Windows users, they'll see the Workplace shell as a great leap in productivity, especially for running multiple things at one time. If you have DOS users, need I even say, the power of the Workplace shell is absolutely incredible. Now, when you first start using the Workplace shell, it's an object-oriented user interface. That sounds to be a little confusing, a little more complex than you'd like. From a user perspective, all it means is that everything is an object, and you act upon every object exactly the same way, no matter what it is. Whether it's a folder, whether it's a picture, an icon for your printer, an icon for your CD-ROM drive, it doesn't matter. You click on it with the left mouse button, and you select it. You click on it with the right mouse button, and you get a pop-up menu that tells you what you can do with it. You can move it, you can copy it, you can delete it, you can open up the settings for it. And the settings for different objects may differ, and I'll run through some of those for you. But no matter what it is, you get to it exactly the same way. The next thing that I want to point out about the Workplace shell is the way that you use it is a lot different than Windows. Now in Windows, you have the Program Manager, and you have the File Manager. If you want to work with programs, you go over here, and if you want to work with files, you go over here. Well, to users, programs, files, no. With OS2, it's an object. It doesn't matter if it's a file on your hard disk, if it's a pointer to a Windows program or a DOS program, if it's another folder that contains other things, you work with them exactly the same way, and you can logically group them. So, in this case, This happens to be a folder I called Demo because I'm doing a demonstration. So I put all the things that I'm going to use inside that folder. At home, I have a folder called Month End Close. And yeah, you can use those long names, up to 254 characters to describe these. So in Month End Close, I put the things, not just the programs I use at the end of the month, like maybe Quicken, but I also put the documents that I use at the end of the month. I've got folders on my hard disk called 1993 Taxes, and it's got all the stuff from last year's taxes out on my hard disk, and it's a very depressing place to go, but occasionally I have to go back to last year's taxes. They're logically grouped. There's a huge difference between that and a program manager and a file manager. New users, advanced users, they all find the Workplace shell to be the interface of choice. Now, when I'm working within a folder, again, I can click with the right mouse button for the pop-up menus. Depending on what the object is, I can use those menus. I can also use simple drag and drop to be able to take objects from one place to the next place. I can drag from one folder and drop on the next folder. In fact, if I went back in there and I wanted to grab things as a group, now that pop-up menu is for all of these things. If I wanted to drag them, I could drag and drop them in one easy movement. Other things about the Workplace shell that I think you'll like, if you're already an OS2 user, I can take these objects here and say, you know, I use these objects very frequently. I want to put these objects on this new launch pad. And what the launch pad is for is keep a nice clean desktop. You know, there's always those objects that you use on a very frequent basis. Just drop it down there, take the other stuff and put it away. For example, here's my information folder. If I open it up, it shows me there's all OS2's online documentation. Yes, all of the documentation is online. Don't worry about losing the books. Well, you know, I've got a new user, and I'd like him to have all of this documentation very readily available. So I'm going to take this icon, I'm going to drop it down onto the launch pad, and now it's a menu item on the launch pad. I can take this and clean it up, put it away, keep a nice clean desktop, so it's a little easier for him to use. If he ever needs the documentation, it's only one button away on the launch pad. The launch pad also allows me to do other frequently used things like lock up the system. So when I want to go away and I want a password protection on the front end, bring up the Windows list. Window list shows me everything that happens to be running at the time. All of that's there. So the launch pad's nice and easy to use. If you want to get into the things that you can do to adjust the launch pad, click on it with the right mouse button. It has a pop-up menu, as every object has a pop-up menu. And always remember, when there's a pop-up menu, help is always one of the menu items, so the user can easily find out what they can do with that object. Now, I like this. It looks pretty. You can make it look like whatever you want to, but how do you go about doing that? Well, if you go up into the System Setup folder, here's a group of things that allow me to customize OS2 to look like whatever I want it to. If you'll notice OS2 when it installs, it looks good now, but it doesn't look like my system. I customized it. You can make it look any way you want to. With the color palette, I can go ahead and grab a color palette, drag and drop a color if I'd like, over onto a folder. I've changed the color of that folder. If I want to go back, I just grab white again and drop it back. Now, underneath there, the text had a different color underneath it. Well, how do I adjust that? Well, we have a thing called the Scheme Palette. The Scheme Palette allows me to go in. Let's say that I want to make a new scheme. From within there, I can change the colors and thicknesses and fonts of every single item in the system. If I happen to like that, I could come up with a set of corporate standards. I could come up with a set of family standards. I want to go ahead then and drag that, drop the Scheme Palette, but I want it to change everything in the system. Well, underneath, notice it says drag an item to the target window to change it, or hold the Alt key down while you drag it, and it'll change all things. So fonts, colors, all of that can be adjusted very easily with a drag and drop. If I want to change a font, very simply grab a font, drag it, drop it, and I've just changed the font. It makes the Workplace shell very usable. And as far as those fonts are concerned, remember, you can drag and drop fonts for that person in your organization that happens to be sight impaired. So you can make a very nice, bold, maybe 24-point font, drop it onto the desktop and on other windows, and it makes it a lot easier for that person to use OS2. Other things that are new in version 3 for customization, there's a thing called Comet Cursor. Anybody have that, well, I got a really good laptop, except, well, I had to get the less expensive screen. I wanted the good CPU and lots of memory, but I couldn't afford the one with the super screen. Well, those less expensive screens, it's sometimes hard to see your mouse as the pointer moves across on the screen. Well, now we've got a thing called Comet Cursor. Comet Cursor will allow me to grab, well, I'd like the tail length to be long and the cursor size, circle size to be large. Now, as I drag my cursor, I can see where it goes across the screen. Comet Cursor makes it a lot easier to use on those laptops. If I turn Comet Cursor off, I can actually go in and change my mouse pointers if I'd like to. If I go into Mouse, notice there's all of the different settings. Everything in the Workplace shell comes up with the settings folders like this, which gives me tabs, very much like a spiral notebook, and spirals along the side. If I go into the mappings, I can change my mouse. Let's say I want to go left-handed with my mouse. It's all from there. If I want to change mouse pointers, I can change them from here. So if I want a larger mouse pointer for that laptop, because OS2 is very well suited for portable computing, I can change the mouse pointer from there. Now, along with this user interface, the Workplace shell is very powerful, and I could show you a lot of function underneath it. It's worthy of an entire hour in and of itself. Let me remind you, if I open the settings for any object, there's Spiral Notebook, look and feel. Hey, anybody seen Chicago? I know it's not going to be here for a long, long time, but if anybody's taken a look at it, doesn't it have pop-up menus? Yeah, you know what? Well, OS2, we've had them for a couple of years now, but with Chicago, yeah, it has pop-up menus. And if you open it up, don't they have these spirals? Well, no. They put the spirals along the bottom. They changed that. They put the spirals on the bottom. That's a lot like OS2, too. They did a lot of things very much like that. Underneath OS2, we have object technology. It's called the System Object Model. And I'm not going to go into great detail about it, but it allows me, as a customer, to do anything I want with this workplace because we wrote it with object-oriented technology. And if you go underneath Chicago, there's nothing. There's no object technology. Microsoft is 2 years behind anything like IBM's System Object Model. You're waiting for Chicago and waiting and waiting. Oh, you want that? That's a wait for Cairo. If you think Chicago is a long way from here, you should see Cairo. It's a long, long way from here. And if you want to wait, well, that's your business. But if you want it now, OS2 provides it all now. No waiting. The easy use, the customization capabilities of OS2, the ability to do this all with your software using object-oriented technology, it's all in OS2's Workplace shell now, no waiting. Now, when you run a DOS application under OS2, remember, we're really running DOS, and the way that we run that is in its own virtual machine. We go to the Intel chip, and we create a virtual 86 processor, and we load DOS into it, and then we load the application. Now, you're all probably very familiar with DOS, have been for a while. There's a lot of settings in DOS, and files, and buffers, and all of those things, all of the memory management things. Well, so how do you control them? Do you set them once, and that's what your programs use? No, because each one gets its own virtual machine. You can customize each one. The way that OS2 works, click on an object with the left mouse button, right mouse button, I get a pop-up menu. I'm going to open the settings for a DOS program here. This happens to be a game I just got off Compuserve. It's called Jazz Rabbit. And the game, jazz.bat, is the file that starts this thing. Well, when I identify a program in OS2, I will automatically adjust the settings. How does that happen? Well, in OS2, here's the path, and it's C:\jazz. If I put in 123.exe, OS2 would automatically go out to the hard disk, find that file 123.exe, interrogate it, find out which version it is. It finds out that that version happens to be version 2.3 DOS, and when I go over and I select Session, DOS Settings, OS2 will already have adjusted the DOS settings for that program so that it runs best under OS2. It has a database of applications that it recognizes, and it's a very large database. And when I select it, it automatically, now in version 3, goes out there, identifies the file, adjusts the settings accordingly. Now, here are a set of different settings that I can go in and adjust. If I just want to adjust memory settings, I click on Memory Settings, OK, and it brings up only those settings that affect virtual memory for the DOS programs. Things like upper memory blocks. Do I want to use them? Do I want DOS high on? If I want to limit how much memory my DOS program has. EMS memory, XMS memory. If I want to change my XMS memory to something greater than 2 megabyte, how about 16 megabyte per running program? How about if I change my EMS memory so that I want, instead of 2 megabyte, I can take it up to 32 megabyte per running. Now, wait a minute, David. So you have a machine with 32 megabyte? No, this is virtual memory. This doesn't really exist. OS2 gives the DOS program its memory. You don't have to get a memory manager. OS2's memory management is far superior to anything you can get on the shelves in the store, I will guarantee. It's become such a moot point in OS2, I don't even mention it anymore. And these settings on a DOS program by DOS program basis are the things that allow me to do that. If I wanted to go back in, by the way, to these DOS settings and change all settings, I can page down and notice all of the different things that are available, including things like the priority of these different DOS programs on a priority by or session by session basis. Now, I don't understand. So you can set the priority of it in relation to what? In relation to other DOS programs. Remember, in OS2, you can run up to 240 DOS sessions at the same time. Reality, 30 DOS programs is not unheard of in OS2. You run 4 or 5 DOS programs and you want one to be more important than the others, set your session priority here. It's a little slider. Now, I'm from Chicago, where a slider is it's a hamburger from a certain chain up that way, but here a slider happens to actually be something to set my priority. Take the slider, drag it up, drag it back down. In this case, I want it to be the highest priority. I leave it at priority 1. These settings allow me to go in and adjust so that I don't know what the percentage is, but a huge percentage of DOS programs, I never have a problem, and they run underneath OS2. The only thing I, David Barnes, personally have ever had problems with are the games that don't want to share with anybody. And again, you can always use that dual boot capability to take you back to be pure, unadulterated DOS. But you know what, David? I'm such a DOS lover. I like Novell's DOS 7. But I also like IBM's DOS 6.3, which I prefer. You know what? I've still got DOS 3.0, and I like run them. You can run all of these DOSes at the same time in OS2. When I say OS2 runs DOS programs well, you could have Novell's DOS 7 in one window, IBM's DOS 6.3 in another window, and Microsoft's DOS 3.0 in another window, and be running the programs all at the same time. Here's an example. There's that Jazz Rabbit. I'm going to go ahead and click on this Jazz Rabbit, and it's going to load in some DOS device drivers? Yes, OS2 supports your DOS device drivers. If you've got things, I just got a Curta tablet. Really nice little tablet. It allows me to do sketching inside of a Windows program that I use. Well, it comes with a DOS device driver. That's okay, we use it. But don't try that underneath NT because, well, NT can't do that. Of course not. It can't use DOS device drivers in a virtual machine. It doesn't have near the DOS compatibility that OS2 does. Now, here's my DOS game. I like it, but I've got work to do. I want to put it up into a window. I can run my DOS games now so that they're up in a window, and while they're off and running, I can go off and do other things. DOS applications can be minimized into a window, whether they're text or graphics. Sometimes I scale them, so I shrink them down. Other times we'll clip them, so you have to scroll from side to side and up and down. But the idea that I can run these games independent of each other, put them in a window while I go work. Now, let's say I wanted to get some of the graphics out of a window here. I can do a cut and paste right out of a DOS window and take the data from a DOS program and paste it in a Windows program. Paste it into an OS2 program. And not just text, graphics as well. So when the graphics come up for Jazz Rabbit here, I go up from the drop-down menu and I select Mark. When I select that, OS2 freezes that frame so that it stays there. The program's running. It just freezes the frame. I mark the data on the screen in the area that I want. I happen to like this area here. I go back down here and select Copy. That's in OS2's clipboard. Now, when I go off later and do some other things, I can paste it into a Windows program or into an OS2 program, and I'll show you that later. Now, to give you an idea of how good OS2's Windows application support is, the best thing to do, start up a program and let it run. In this case, I'm going to start up one of my all-time favorites. It's called Pixar's Typistry. And Typistry will allow me to take any TrueType font, make it three-dimensional, twist it, turn it, make it into a movie as it spins and rotates on the screen, etc. Notice how quickly that program just launched. I'll show you OS2's Windows Fast Load option and how it works, but while it's doing that, let's go ahead and start something running in the background to give you an idea of how we multitask Windows programs. I'm going to go ahead and open up a model here that I created. Within Typistry now, there's the model. I'm going to say render to screen, excellent and slow. And anybody that knows Pixar Typistry or any other program that does three-dimensional renderings, the results are going to be beautiful, but how long does it take? Well, it takes quite some time. I do renders that take between 45 minutes, and the last one, long one I did, was 7.5 days. Now, what do you do in Windows for 7.5 days? While Pixar Typistry renders? It's a good time to take a vacation, folks, because you can't use your computer. Absolutely not, because Pixar Typistry is limited by Windows multitasking. It's a great program, but Windows cooperative multitasking is very limiting. So when Typistry takes over the system, it doesn't share. It does a little bit, enough to let you start a program, but the other day I did a render and I tried to install Sidekick in just plain DOS Windows, and I came back an hour later, nothing happened to either program. Apparently neither one could cooperate, so they said we just won't do anything. That's what cooperative multitasking is all about. In OS2, more important programs preempt less important programs. When I started the Windows program, we started a virtual machine, like I mentioned before, loaded DOS, loaded in the Windows code. In my case, I already had Windows on my hard disk, so we used that Windows code. Then we put it off in its own virtual machine, and we preemptively multitask it. Now, we can support Windows Enhanced Mode. We can support Windows for workgroups. We can support Windows 3.1.1. We can support Win32s. Win32s is a 32-bit Windows API that allows certain programs, and the only ones I really know of now are Mathematica and Mathematica. But if there are Windows 32-bit programs someday and they use that API, we can support them. To set up Windows programs for that support, I'm going to go into my System Setup folder here, and I can get to System Setup very quickly from the pop-up menu of the desktop. And within the System Setup folder, I'm going to go into WinOS2 Setup. I want to point out a couple of things that are here. One, I can run Windows programs in full screen. If you have a customer or a user and they happen to like Dashboard, Program Manager and File Manager, I don't know many people that mind leaving that. But Dashboard's pretty nice, or maybe Norton's Desktop. You can still use those. You can still have Windows appear exactly the same way that it does on their desktop today. Select WinOS2 full screen and they get the Windows desktop. They can leave it in the background and it continues to work. Anybody ever have a problem in Windows where they tried to print and do anything else? Yeah, and now you know how much of your computer it takes to do that? Almost 3 or 4%. With the other 97, 96%, Windows idles very quickly and nothing happens. Well, with OS2, you leave a program like that in the background. While it goes and prints, you go do something else. In this case, I can do that in a full screen. Or what I just did here, I put Typistry on my desktop so that it just seamlessly fit in with my other programs. And that's what WinOS2 window is. What the fast load option is, well, David, if I have OS2 running, and I'm going to start a Windows program, I have to get the virtual machine, load DOS, load Windows. That's like rebooting Windows, right? And then the Windows program. And so it takes a little bit of time. When we have fast load checked, it already has a very small virtual machine with limited minimum requirements and DOS and Windows running all the time. You don't see it, you don't know it's there. Doesn't take any CPU cycles. And when you go to load Typistry, bam, it opens in that session, so it's very quick and easy. I can start other Windows programs now in that same virtual machine. But anybody have a Windows program that usually or occasionally comes up with a general protection fault? What that means is, believe it or not, in Windows, any program can go to the memory of any other program unchecked and change it. If it sounds scary, it is. And that's why Windows is often something you really ought to consider in client-server computing. That's not really the right answer. Well, in OS2, we can protect them from each other. by clicking on Separate Session. When I start that program, I bring it up in its own session. It can't touch my memory. It can't touch the memory of any other program. And if it fails, that's fine. We provide the crash protection that keeps it in its own machine. We kill that one and the other programs continue to run. That's why I say OS2's Windows program support is second to none, because it's not emulation. We're not pretending to run Windows. We are running Windows, whether it be the Windows that came on your hard disk or the WinOS2 that can come with OS2. It's real Windows. And if you look at Microsoft's NT, no, that's not real Windows. They emulate it. And if you look at what Chicago will do someday, if you ever want to wait that long, it will emulate it. What does OS2 do? We use real Windows software, and that's why we do it so well. We can protect Windows programs from each other, something that Windows NT can't do, something that Chicago is going to have a pretty hard time doing from what we can tell as early as it is, as far as it is away, if you ever want to wait that long. And once again, I just want to stress, this is a real operating system, and we have it now. I love Picture Typistry. I love the support that it gives me. If I've got Typistry there, and I want to go off and do something else, go back and work with my desktop. Do you notice the Hourglass? No. You get the Hourglass occasionally with OS2, and I want to tell you, when you get that Hourglass, move your mouse pointer away. It will very often go away, because that one thing is the only thing that's busy. So I go back in here to my system, and you'll notice everything has been continuously running. I'm running a Windows program in the background, and while it's doing it, I'm using my system. If I want to go off and use OS2's multimedia, this file here is called a WAV file. It's a music file. OS2 supports multimedia natively. So when you click on a file, in this case it happens to be a .wav file, automatically launch the file into the player so that I can click and play a music file directly on my desktop. While that's running, my Windows program continues to run in the background. Now, while that's coming up, I still have a mouse pointer and I can still go work with my system. Now, this WAV file happens to be in the neighborhood of about 3.5 megabyte. It's a big file. While it's off and running, I can still go off and do other things. In this case, I go ahead and hit it. It's a rather annoying little sound you get out of the laptop. Volume control on board. Now remember, OS2 provides the capability of having multiple audio streams running at the same time. I can have multiple things playing at the same time, and OS2 provides one master control for me so that I can adjust all of those different audio sources. For anybody that's out there and creating multimedia applications and has ever tried to sync in the different sounds from the different sources, it's pretty hard. In OS2, it's pretty darn easy. Windows users, please go home today and try to run music at the same time you run Picture Typistry and see if you get an update on the screen while you're playing that music. I don't think so. And it's not because your computer can't do it. It's because DOS Windows can't, unless it's running underneath OS2. So there's Windows support. We'll continue to support Windows as long as you need the support from us. But what's really neat is the OS2 applications that we can support. To show you that, I'm going to give you a peek at OS2's bonus pack. It's a whole suite of applications designed for OS2 that show you the real power of this operating system. Now, I've shown you OS2. It runs the DOS programs, it runs the Windows programs, and with the Workplace shell, it's very, very powerful. It runs OS2 programs as well, and the best way to show that is with the bonus pack. The bonus pack is a combination of applications that all exploit OS2 and are guaranteed to work together because they come packaged with the product. Now, let me give you an idea of some of the things that are in the bonus pack, and this list is not all inclusive. There's too many things here to go through the details of all of these individual products. These are all real products packaged in, not little applets, full-sized, multi-threaded OS2 applications. A few of the big hitters. In the bonus pack, we included our person-to-person software. Now, this is software from IBM Corporation. It's been around and available for quite some time, but now is packaged in OS2. Person-to-person provides collaborative computing in a local area network, a wide area network, modem to modem, from me to you. It allows me to be able to create a phone list in my call manager. And from that phone list, I could grab 3 or 4 persons that I want to communicate with, however many I would like, connect to all of those people at the same time, share through the chalkboard, through the clipboard, data. I can cut and paste from my machine to your machine. I'm in Atlanta, you're in Beijing. Absolutely, positively, from OS2 programs to Windows programs through the clipboard function. Within person-to-person, I can use the chalkboard so that we can sketch out plans and ideas and then go into chat mode so we can send data back and forth so we can discuss these ideas. And if you want to take this one step further, on machines with the Action Media card installed. Action Media is a card that will take video from a small camera, any size camera, your home video machine. Go ahead and take it directly into the Action Media card, compress it, and send it. The other person on the other end with Action Media can play back this data so that we're doing real-time video conferencing in a LAN or WAN environment. That's incredible. That collaborative computing all packaged together in person-to-person. It even allows me to take still pictures as well, use those stills so that I can do back and forth collaborative computing using the chalkboard, using a chat mode, using cut and paste the data. All of that packaged within OS2. That's just one of the items in the bonus pack. Other items in the bonus pack, well, there's FaxWorks Lite for OS2. FaxWorks is a multi-threaded OS2 program that provides faxing. It's very easy to use, and remember, this is OS2. It works in the background. When I go out to an OS2 document and I want to print it, instead of saying print it to my 4019 laser printer or my HP LaserJet, I say print it to my fax, and off it goes. Comes up with a list. I can click on phone book, and from the phone book list, in fact, let's take a peek at it right now. Here's fax. I can say I want to send a fax. From there, it'll ask me, well, who do I want to send it to? Let's enable a cover sheet, go to the phone book. I could have a list of items here in the phone book. Let's say I want to send it to Joe Schmidt at Super Software. Fills in the information. I can put in any other specifics I want, and I go ahead and send. Now, Windows users, here's the exciting part. When it starts doing that, use your computer. This is OS2. Background faxing is such a trivial task. Leave it in the background and go work. Most Windows users I know, they're buying OS2 for Windows if for no other reason than to be able to fax and use their computer, or be able to print and use their computer. FaxWorks Lite is a terrific OS2 program, and right out of the box, OS2's bonus pack allows you to do background faxing, previewing of the faxes, printing of the faxes in very high quality. That's a kind of application that normally, you know the prices of a fax. Well, this is packaged in OS2. So it gives you an idea of some more of the value that comes along with it. Now, SIM for OS2. Anybody familiar with Compuserve Information Manager? Well, if you're going to be out there selling or supporting OS2, Compuserve is one of the best sources of information for you. The OS2 forums on Compuserve are always very, very busy forums. There are several. And if you go into the Compuserve Information Manager, you'll see some of the active forums are already installed for you so that you can click and go. If you don't have an account with Compuserve, look into your OS2 documentation and you'll find easy access on how to become a Compuserve user. With the Compuserve Information Manager now, you have a graphical front end to that information. Now, I have a friend. He's got Compuserve Information Manager for Windows, and although it's good, he knows OS2 and knows, of course, it's got to be a better product at communicating because of OS2's preemptive multitasking. So he installed the OS2 version of Compuserve Information Manager, and it picked up the profiles from his Windows version of Compuserve Information Manager. The two products look almost identical, but they work differently, and they work differently this way. I went out to Compuserve and I saw a bunch of files I wanted. I listed a whole group. I selected the ones I wanted and I said download. And while it was downloading, I browsed through the others. I used my system. Not just used my system, I used the same program. That's impossible in DOS Windows. DOS Windows only has one thread, which means one program can only be doing one thing at a time. In OS2, the programmers that wrote this code spawned a thread to do the download, gave me another thread so I could browse other descriptions. It saved me money on the spot because it saved me connect time. Compuserve Information Manager, as you can see from the screen here, will allow me to go in, do a direct logon. If I click on a menu of my favorite places on Compuserve, all of the OS2 forums are already filled in for you. So if you want support for OS2, right there is the OS2 support form. If I click on it and select Go, it'll come up and try to connect. Now I'm not connected to a phone line now, and it'll tell me that. The device is not ready, and I select That's OK. And in this case, I'm going to actually go ahead and end the program. The Compuserve Information Manager is easy, graphical access to one of the wealthiest sources of information out there for people that are PC users, people that are interested in hobbies for home. It's a great application. Now, that's one place to get information, but we've all heard about the information superhighway. It's got a lot of hype lately. Those people that really know what it is, today the information superhighway is the Internet. The Internet is a wealth of information, and what it is very hard to explain unless you're really a computer user, but what we all know about it is it's hard to get to. Not just hard to get to. Once you get there, it's hard to use, unless, of course, you're a Unix person and you happen to like to grep, right? Well, if you're not a Unix person and you don't like to grep, what we've got in OS2 is the IBM Internet Service in what's called the OS2 Internet Advantage. This allows me, now remember, what I'm showing you here is in OS2 version 3. You don't buy this separately. Packaged in the product is the ability to do one button connect to the Internet. And when I say one button, with a quick click on on-ramp registration, I can go out and connect to the Internet through the IBM Advantis network. Now, what's Advantis? Well, we're the IBM company. We've got one of the biggest networks in the world. Not just have one of the biggest networks in the world, we maintain it like a network. We maintain, and I'll tell you that I went out and bought Internet access through another access provider, and they're a nice group of guys, and I met them, and I went in the back room, and I couldn't believe the wires and machines and all connected together, and it's cool because I'm using it at home. Would I ever use that for my business? Not a chance in the world. It just looked too frail. And you go into an IBM computer room, like you would expect, raised floors, security, backup, and administration. Our Advantis network provides the Internet access through that network with local phone numbers through most everywhere you could go in the United States. One button access says, well, here's the Internet Access Service first menu that I see. I want to open a new account, so I click on Open a New Account. Well, what kind of account do I want, business or personal, or do I just want to learn more about the Internet? Well, I know enough about the Internet that I want to go right for it. I'm going to go ahead and say, Open a personal account. I fill in my name, address, phone number, add in a Discover card number, American Express card number, Visa or MasterCard, click, I'm on the network. It connects, it configures, it allows me then to go and use the browsers that I'm going to show you in OS2 to do graphical browsing of the Internet. You don't have to use IBM as your Internet service provider. You can use another service provider. Advantis is one of your choices. The code that comes in OS2 to allow access to the Internet will also allow you to use another Internet service provider. So those people that I use down in Austin, Texas, I can still use them, or I can use the Advantis connection. Once I'm out there on the Internet, though, where do I go from here? Instructions are provided to get a nice, easy start. The very first thing they say is it's a good idea to go ahead and use the newsreader, or in fact use the Gopher service, and a Gopher will go out and find things for you on the Internet. It's a graphical user interface with nice, easy pull-down menus. It'll find things on the Internet and bring them back to you. You can also use the newsreader to go into specific news groups and pull down information. You might say, but you know what, David, I've been an Internet user, but I know OS2's TCP/IP. Boy, it's got to be pretty good because OS2 is such a good communicator, but I've got this Windows mosaic interface I happen to like. Use it. OS2 supports your Windows programs, and when you start a Windows program in OS2, we provide TCP/IP support for that Windows program so that we support what are called WinSock services. So those Windows programs can use TCP/IP. DOS programs can use that TCP/IP so you can go out through your modem, connect to the Internet. There is no easier access to the Internet that I know of today. Now, I'm connected on the Internet. I want to send some mail. Anybody get Internet mail? Yeah, we all have. Anybody know what those first 50 lines or so mean? Well, the Unix people are going, yeah, they mean grep. No, they don't mean grep, but they've got all the routing information of the Internet and all of that other. Well, in OS2 now, we have provided All-Time-Media Mail 2. All-Time-Media Mail, an IBM-developed product, allows me to send Internet email far beyond what you thought was capable, was possible. And what I mean by that is, I want to send a letter to Mom. You know what? I want Mom to be able to see the new video of my son and daughter. They're just so beautiful. Wouldn't it be great if I could send video over the internet, send audio over the internet? Well, no, you can't do that. Oh, yes, you certainly can. The internet has a specification called MIME. The MIME specification allows for the sending and receiving of video and audio and rich text, bold fonts, red colors, underscore, italic. And we have a product called Multimedia Mail, which provides for the sending and receiving of that. So I can put this OS2 version 3 on my mother's machine, and she clicks, and it automatically connects her to the Advantest network, and she gets multimedia information, a multimedia birthday card from my son and daughter. Now, there's no, but your mother, now wait a minute. Folks, to give you an idea, my mom's VCR, it's blinking 12, okay? She's not a technical person. You think I can get her up and running on this? I know I can. She clicks on the icons and she goes. That's the power of this user interface. That's the power of this easy access out to the internet. By the way, you think it's pretty cheap to use the internet? It's darn cheap to use the internet. And it's a lot easier if I'm over in Europe to send my wife some email over in the United States using the internet than it is to pick up and make a long-distance phone call. When I talk about value in OS2 in the bonus pack, the value of using the internet with graphical tools in front of it cannot be understated. It's very, very powerful. Cannot be overstated, apologize. It's very, very powerful interface. It's a very, very powerful set of tools. It's all packaged together. Now, the last thing I want to show you within the bonus pack in OS2 is a thing called Footprint Works. And this is sort of a last but not least. I say last but not least because this is one of the most valuable pieces of software in the entire bundle. I say valuable because if you take the price of a database, spreadsheet, word processor, charting utility, and put that all together, and then add on a personal information manager with calendars and to-do lists, it's a pretty expensive piece of software. All of that together would be far more than just the cost of OS2, and it's just one of the things that are packaged into the bonus pack of OS2. Footprint Works has been around for a while, and let me go ahead and launch it right now, and I'll show you the very first menu that you'll see. Just to give you an idea of how long this product has been in the OS2 world, in Europe, this has been considered IBM Works for quite some time. So we've had a great relationship with the Footprint Works people. But now we've taken it one further. This product, as you see it here, has been altered so that you as a customer can use the objects that make this all work. Consider, you're a bank. How many times have you created a spreadsheet to put in your internal applications or a word processor function? You do it over and over and over again. Well, the benefit of object-oriented technology is supposed to be that I don't have to rewrite software. Object-oriented technology in OS2 consists of the system object model and things that exploit that system object model so that I can share. So, Footprint Works, database, spreadsheet, word processor, and their objects are available for you and your applications to use. That way, you can write a corporate application or a user application and have that database in your application. Have that spreadsheet function come up instead of you rewriting it and reusing it over and over and over again. Now, within the Footprint Works menu, here's the word processor, spreadsheet, charting utility, data filer. Let me go ahead and open up an existing data filer function. This one probably in my templates folder. Here's one for inventory. These are some samples that you can use or that you can use as guidelines when you create your own. Now here's the data filer. If I wanted to go in, I can change records, organize records. And remember, this is for the database that comes in Footprint Works. So not only do you have the database, so you can store your home items as well as your corporate items, you can create reporting front ends to it very easily. With drag and drop, you can take charts and put them in here. You can take spreadsheet functions and put them in. Again, I don't have time to demonstrate the entire functionality of the Footprint Works products, but believe me, when you look at the price of it compared to others on the shelves and then put that value into OS2's bonus pack, I think you'll see it very worthwhile. The other thing you ought to take a look at is the calendar function in OS2's bonus pack provided by Footprint Works that allow me to go on a day-to-day basis. Let's say I want to pick April 19th. I double-click on April 19th, and it'll bring up my to-do list for that day. I can do it in a yearly view. Here we go. In fact, we've got some to-do items here. Rover is hungry. I put a feed the dog to do on there because, well, that's actually the only thing I do around my house. No, actually I do some other things, but Rover is one of the most important things to my family. So here's the to-do item. If I want to work with that item, what do? You click with the right mouse button. This is an OS2 application. With the right mouse button, you get a pop-up menu. I want to actually mark that item as complete. So it's out of my list, it's off into the database, marked complete. If I go out here a little bit further, I say, you know, I want to actually work with my to-do list. Select Launch To-Do List, and I can launch from there. Again, with the right mouse button as a pop-up. I get into my to-do list here. I want to do something else. I say I want to launch my phone address book, and I can launch the address book that's directly in there. Once I get into the address book, I can put in numbers. From there, I can say that I want to sort them or select them, or say I want to launch my notepad function. So I can put notepad functions directly in there. It's all integrated into the workplace shell and integrated into the way that you work with the workplace shell so that you as a user with OS2, the workplace shell and the bonus pack can be up and running with no additional applications. You can send a customer home with OS2 version 3 under their arms and they don't need anything else. You got your applications and database and spreadsheet and word processor and phone dialing functions and internet connectivity and Compuserve information manager all packaged together for a price that, again, you have to agree with me is one of the best values in the software market today. Now, when we built OS2 version 3, the laptop user, the portable user, was at the very top of our list as who we thought OS2 would be good for. And the reason is that the laptop user suddenly is the desktop user as well, and there's a lot of that going on. I'm one of the people that does that. When I live out on the road, I end up using my laptop, and when I get home, it's my desktop computer too, because it's my hand-in-hand tool. Well, when I use it, I use these Pcmcia cards, and they're excellent sources of hardware, just easy to stick inside your computer. But has anybody ever configured one of these? It's not really very fun. Well, let's see. You have to have Pcmcia socket services, and, well, you also need Pcmcia card services, and, well, then you also need Pcmcia device driver services, and they all must be in your config system in a different order. And one actually comes from the hardware vendor, and one actually comes from the software vendor, and one comes from the operating system vendor, or the people that make the card. I'm not sure who sends me which one, but I know, oh, if this sounds confusing, it is, until OS2 version 3. I had this card installed on my computer. I installed OS2 version 3. All I did was install OS2. This happens to be a hard file. In other words, it looks to my system as if it was a hard disk. All I do in OS2 version 3, plug it in. With plug and play for Pcmcia, OS2 automatically identifies the card while OS2 is up and running now. I've got my system up and running. My ThinkPad is up here running. I plug in the card, and it identifies it as a hard disk. Ooh, but wait a minute, it says it's not ready. Well, I found out from the person that wrote these software drivers that you have to click on one of these and access it to make it ready. Well, what do I do to click on this? Well, because it appears to my system as an entire drive, in this case, it's my D drive. I go ahead and click on it. It accesses it, makes it ready. These are the files on that card that I just stuck inside my computer. And if you go back over here to the plug and play menu, you'll see that it is now in a ready state. Now this is pretty neat. So my friend just hands me this 15 megabyte hard file. I stick it in the side of my computer, and OS2 automatically identifies it and gives me access. If this sounds real neat, it is. But we took it one further. The reason that we call this plug and play, in fact, play at will, is if I select Options, Register Object, I told my system here that when I plugged in a modem, I wanted it to launch, in this case, FaxWorks for OS2. Now, how did I do that? I took the FaxWorks icon, I dragged it, and I dropped it, and I put it on. Now, I once said that I drug an icon, and I got a critique that said, no, the correct past tense of drag is dragged. So I went home and looked it up, and it said drug, past tense of drag, not used by literate since the 1960s. So I don't say that anymore. So I dragged the icon, dropped it over there, and now when I install my modem, I want it to launch FaxWorks. Now, wait a minute. My modem, I use it for the OS2 Internet Advantage, and I use it for FaxWorks, and I use it for the communications. Well, how do I know which one I want to do? Well, what you can do is you can drop other icons on here, like Compuserve Information Manager, drop it on, and say manual. When I plug in my modem, I want you to give me a list, and let me choose from the list, and I'll just select one of them. In this case, FaxWorks OS2 Lite is all I have selected, so I select OK. I go ahead and take my modem, again, another Pcmcia card. In this case, I'll stick it down into my bottom slot, insert the modem. OS2 identifies the modem. Then it'll launch for me. There's the modem. It's ready. It happens to be COM2. Launches my fax program for me. If I had things in my fax queue, they're sent. So if you get in an environment where you're going to share this Pcmcia card, I can go into the office, say, hey, Maria, can I borrow your modem? Gives me her modem. I plug it into my machine. OS2 identifies it. I go off and fax. Not only is it less expensive to do it that way, it's awfully convenient. No changing my config sys file, no going in and powering off and powering on. Plug and play for Pcmcia as an IBM technology provides a laptop user so much ease of use of not just the software but the hardware that it cannot be overemphasized. It's great technology, and these Pcmcia cards, they're going to our desktop machines. You can bet. I've seen it happen already. So we're going to have this kind of convenience on our desktop as well so that we can share resources. It's less expensive, and it's a lot easier to use now that we have this for OS2. Well, there you have it, OS2 version 3. Now, I told you it runs in a 386SX processor or above, but I never told you how much memory it takes. OS2 version 3 runs in 4 megabytes of memory. Now, if that sounds astounding, it is. We worked long and hard to get OS2 into 4 megabytes of memory without taking away any function, and we did a terrific job. Now, it runs in 4 megabytes of memory. It screams in 8. With DOS application support, Windows application support, and the entire OS2 bonus pack, OS2 is a value that you cannot miss. All of that with object-oriented technology and 32-bit robustness today. Unlike our competition, with OS2 version 3, there's no waiting.